Hello, true cultists. Welcome to episode 20 of Into the Necrosphere. Your host, as always, Jackie Smith. And if you like God Dethroned, then you are in luck because today's guest is going to be Mr. Henri Sattler of God Dethroned. He's the vocalist, guitarist, and founder of the band who, when I was doing my research, turned out they've been around for 30 years, which is absolutely fucking insane. I remember back when Bloody Blasphemies came out, which I think was their second album, and I think that was 1994. So, yeah, lots of time has passed. We're obviously not going to be talking about Bloody Blasphemies. We're discussing the new record, Illuminati, which dropped on Metal Blade this past Friday, depending on when you listen to this, Feb 7th. And we hit on a bunch of topics, including the band's career since they reformed in 2015, our shared love of World War I history, and a load more. So do stick around for that, coming up in just a few minutes. First, though, a few of the regular reminders. If you have just discovered us on YouTube and you're thinking to yourself that my dulcet tones could brighten up the mundanity of your commute or your humdrum day in the office, then do remember that you can download this off pretty much any streaming platform, including iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts, and also follow us on social media. So Into the Necrosphere has accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and also Twitter. It's pretty much all the same. It's at Into the Necrosphere. So get on there, join the conversation, tell me what you think of the show, tell me what you think of the guests, my opinions on various albums, and whatever else comes to mind. Also, after my interview with Henri, don't smash your stop button in despair, because I'm going to be talking about the new Sepultura album, Quadra, or as Derek Green pronounced it on the promo video that came out last week, Quadra. So I'll be sharing my thoughts on that, and then also a world-exclusive premiere of the first single off the forthcoming Corpsing record. Now, some of you guys will recall Giuseppe Cottaspoto. He joined Into the Necrosphere for episode 13 and again for my 2019 countdown. So very much a friend of the show, and he was kind enough to share a song off the forthcoming album with me, which I will play. And I will also tell you how you can get involved in the Kickstarter campaign for the vinyl release of the album. So stick around for that. But in the meantime, please join me in welcoming to the show for the first time ever, Henri Sattler. The first thing I wanted to talk about is really kind of setting the scene ahead of us talking about the new record. You obviously went on a pretty significant hiatus, and hiatus splitting up depending on who you believe. In 2012, right before you guys got back together and did A World Ablaze. What initially kind of led to you deciding to call time on the band and at the very least put things on hold?
Well, it was because I needed some time for myself, basically. I'd been doing the band for about 22 years or something by then, and I there were some things in my life that I needed to deal with, and I felt I could only deal with them if I took the time to have peace on my mind. And I had two options. I could take a break and tell everybody it's just a break, and then I knew people would still bug me every week about playing a show and stuff like that. Or I could call it quits, and then I would have the peace that I was longing for. So I chose the latter. And but when you're a musician, it's very hard to call it quits for good.
Yeah.
And what happened was that the guy who signed us to Metal Blade Records, Michael Trangert from Metal Blade, he died. And so I went to his funeral, and of course, it was only musicians and people from record companies there and stuff like that. And I realized that day how much I missed those people. And so I basically knew by the end of that day that I could not quit. It was not the right time. So it still took me about a year to have everything back together and be able to play again, but still. it was during that day that I realized that I should not quit. So that's why I got the band back together.
Yeah. What did I never knew about Michael passing away. What did he pass away from?
He had a brain tumor.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
It's a slight irony, but I remember talking to Death Angel years back, and they actually similar kind of scenario to you. There was a benefit for Chuck Billy when he had a brain tumor. And they were asked to play, and I think originally it was only going to be everybody barring Mark, the vocalist, that was going to come, and I think they were going to play as the band that they formed after Death Angel split up, and it was kind of like when they saw everybody at the show and they got together and they started playing, they realized, we can't live without this. In a bizarre kind of way, slightly similar to your situation, although obviously, fortunately, we've not lost Chuck Billy. But were you close to Mike at all?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we talked on a weekly basis, at least. Yeah. And without him, we wouldn't be here today. So this man was very important to me, and he moved away from Metal Blade. I don't know, somewhere in the mid-2000s, when the German distributor SPV got bankrupt, and then the hard times for all the record labels, basically.
Yeah.
And then he moved away from Metal Blade and he went to Summer Breeze, the Summer Breeze Festival.
Yeah, yeah.
But he booked us there as well, so I would see him at least every second year, and we would be in touch on a regular basis anyway. So, and so this man was very important to me and the band. So I felt like, I have to be there at the funeral.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started again.
And up until that point, in your mind, were you kind of thinking, God Dethroned is done, that you weren't going to do anything ever again? Or was there always sort of a question mark lingering in the back of your mind over what the future held for the band?
No, in the beginning I thought I was done for real. I thought, okay, this is it. And I enjoyed it for a while to not do anything. Well, I still played. I played in a band called Dictated, a Dutch death metal band. I played bass guitar. I helped them out with a new album and stuff like that. It was just for fun. There was no pressure. With God Dethroned, there's always expectations. And there's always the need for a new album and to play shows and tours and stuff like that. And it felt good in the beginning not to have that pressure anymore.
Yeah. So
I finally had the space that I needed. And but when you sort your problems out, and then then I guess the musician in me got stood up again. And in the beginning I didn't know if I would ever play in God Dethroned again. I thought I wouldn't, but now we know it's different.
Yeah, yeah. Did you feel any of that pressure come back as you guys were, or as you were gearing up to do The World Ablaze?
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't know if I say of course. I don't know if it's that logical. But for me, yes, because I always want to do a good job. I want to try to make the best album possible. And when we got back together in 2015, I didn't want to record a new album. I just wanted to play live shows. That's all. And we could do that for a couple of years because actually a lot of people were longing to see us. But there always comes this point where somebody says, well, it's time for a new record, because if you want to go on like this, you need something new. It was our booking agent who said that to me, man, we need a new album, otherwise I can't get enough shows for you.
Yeah.
So I felt like, okay, we need a new album. And then I do my best. I try to write the best songs possible, and then I feel the pressure again. And it's the same with the new album. Doing a new album and then recording it, and then I start feeling the pressure, and it's terrible. I hate it.
Yeah.
Until the moment comes that the reviews come out, the magazines come out with the reviews and the interviews, and then you see that The album is received very well. Of course, I also noticed that during the interviews and stuff like that. And then it starts to feel good again. Then I start to feel proud of what we wrote, about the songs that we wrote. Mm. And then it starts to be fun again because, then we can go back on the road and play shows, and that's what I like. That's why I record new albums, just to be able to play live.
Yeah, yeah. So all that time away, creatively speaking, how reinvigorating was that for you?
Oh, it was really invigorating. I mean, not playing live for a while is nice, but not playing live for too long makes me nervous. It makes me feel, I don't know, I need to break free or something. And to play live is the best thing there is. To go somewhere with the band and have fun, that's really nice. Mm-hmm.
I definitely, and this is speaking as a fan, and I think sometimes, when so much time has passed, and it's been a decade since Under the Sign of the Iron Cross, but up until that point, you guys had a work rate that was absolutely ridiculous. It was like one album every 2 years at least. And I know Into the Lungs of Hell and The Lair of the White Worm came out, back to back years. But the difference I felt on The World Ablaze, and this is partly why I wanted to start the conversation with speaking about that record, is I felt like that album was a lot less self-conscious than Under the Sign of the Iron Cross. I enjoyed that album, but I really enjoyed The World Ablaze a lot more because I kind of felt like you kind of had a bit of a don't give a fuck attitude in the writing of that record. And I feel like, I'm curious to get your take on whether my observations are in any way accurate, but I feel like you wrote that album for yourself more than you did, necessarily with fans or expectations in mind. And so the songwriting on the album for me was much, much stronger. But at the same time, it just felt a lot kind of freer and a lot, as I said before, a lot less self-conscious. Mm-hmm.
I think that you could be right about that. You can, when you listen to a God Dethroned album, you can hear my state of mind. Meaning that Under the Sign of the Iron Cross being a very aggressive album, and that was my state of mind. Some people from Metal Blade said to me, "Oh, well, we can hear you had something to get off your chest."
Yeah.
Because it was like an explosion of violence, and that's how I felt at the time. And The World Ablaze is written from a completely different perspective. I wanted to keep it simple, so there's no clean vocals, there's no keyboards, there's just guitars, bass, and drums and vocals. Nothing special, just, we try to write good songs, but there's a common factor between a couple of albums, which is Passchendaele, World Ablaze, and the new one, Illuminati. The common factor on these three albums is that I didn't listen to anything else when I wrote songs. In certain times, I listened to bands that I liked, or bands that inspired me, or bands that I looked up to, and those bands influenced me in my songwriting. But I noticed that when I don't listen to anything, just listen to my inner voice, so to speak, and just write what comes naturally, I write much better songs. And that's what I did on Passchendaele, The World Ablaze, and Illuminati. I didn't listen to anything else. I didn't listen to metal at all. And those songs just came from the heart. And I feel that those albums are probably the best albums we ever did. In my opinion.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't disagree with you, because I was just about to mention now. So back when I say this so often on the podcast, I'm personally fucking sick of hearing it, but I should mention it to you because you wouldn't know. But I used to write for Metal Rules and for Chronicles of Chaos between kind of 2002 and 2012. And I remember the record of yours that I enjoyed the most was Passchendaele. And then after that, I absolutely adored The World Ablaze, and everything I've heard of Illuminati so far, I've really liked as well. So I can now that you mention it, I can kind of sense the connection between the three. And it's interesting as well that those have always been certainly Passchendaele and The World Ablaze have been my two favorite God Dethroned albums, and they've also been the ones that have kind of sounded the most uninhibited.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say, I mean, would you say that in cases like that, you have the content of the songs leading where they, leading the kind of musical direction more? Because obviously, you're talking about a topic, that I'm personally extremely interested in, and I want to get to that as well. But the First World War, and it's, it was an unbelievably brutal and aggressive, aggressive war. It was a very strange and very dark period of time. When you remove yourself from kind of, external musical influence, do you feel like maybe the content of what you were singing about was leading where the music was going more?
Not really. It's, when I write a song, I usually come up with a title before I write the music.
Yeah.
A title brings a picture in my head, like a still from a movie.
Yeah.
And when I have that in my head, I know what kind of atmosphere belongs to that picture. And then I can write music. I can write music accordingly. So when I started writing about World War I, music always comes first, but there's usually also a title that comes first before the music even. So when I think of a title like Behind Enemy Lines, then I know what kind of atmosphere I want to have in the song.
Mm.
And then I start writing the music, and then I write the lyrics. So I don't know what the topic will be exactly, but I know which direction I want to go, and then I write whatever comes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know if that makes sense at all, but that's how I work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. It's kind of, it's the sort of, I guess the creative stimulation that you get is visual, and then that visual stimulation, whatever memory you have or something you've seen, it then translates into what you end up writing. So it makes complete sense. But I wanted to ask you, what originally got you fascinated with World War I?
Oh, that happened by accident. Well, actually, I've always been very much interested in history.
Yeah.
So that was a natural thing. But back in the day, for the Lair of the White Worm album and Toxic Touch, we had a Belgian guitar player, Isaac de la Haye, who now plays in Epica.
Mm.
And he lived in Ypres. And Ypres was on the forefront of World War I. It was like it was the one piece of Belgium that was not occupied by the Germans. So he lived there, and I went to visit him on many occasions just to hang out and go to a bar and stuff like that. And I saw all the war memorial signs or sites and the war graves, the cemeteries, the museum, the Menin Gate, Tyncott Cemetery, with all those names of all those soldiers missing in action. Mm. And that inspired me so much to want to know more about World War I. And that inspired me even more to write an album about it. And I also realized that maybe some bands had written some songs about it, like Motorhead and Iron Maiden. But I didn't know about a band who wrote a concept album about World War I. So I thought, okay, that's the thing for us. And that's how it came about. And Passchendaele was received very well. So I thought, okay, I can do another one. And that became Under the Sign of the Iron Cross. And by that time, I made a promise to our fans that I would make a trilogy out of it. So when we came back and did the first new album, it had to be about World War I, and that became The World Ablaze. And by that time, I didn't know what to write about anymore because, World War I was fascinating with the coming of the tank, airplanes, poison gas, and stuff like that. Mainly the war was happening in the trenches.
Yeah, yeah.
So after 3 albums, I didn't know anything to write about World War I anymore. So I was happy I was finished.
Yeah, Well, I mean that is the thing. I think for anybody familiar with World War One, vast chunks of it is just basically guys that sat in misery for months and months on end,
Yeah,
with rats gnawing at their face while they slept. Having to take a shit right near where you ate.
yeah.
Just the I don't think anybody has any real appreciation unless they have genuinely kind of gone in and studied it and understood what happened there. I don't think they have any real appreciation for what those men went through.
No, it seems, well, not to English people, but to many Dutch people, it's like a forgotten war.
Mm.
Because what I remember when I was in school, I didn't hear much about World War One at all. And when in a time that I came in Ypres a lot to visit Isaac, every weekend there were people from England and Scotland visiting the cemeteries there to go to the grave of a relative.
Mm.
Every weekend. It was unbelievable. I didn't expect that, at all. I mean, we went to the pubs at night and the weekends, and then there were always English people there every time again, every weekend again. So it must be a really big thing in the UK.
Mm. I would say, I mean, I think in terms of, I think there's a contingent of people in this country that still really, I think they honor the memory of the soldiers, and they honor the memory of what the war meant. But I do think as the generations are getting older, I think there are more and more people that are forgetting it, and for me that's very sad. And it's in some ways it's dangerous because, it's like they say, you're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past if you don't understand history. In World War, prior to World War One, and I'm sure you know this, but I mean, there was a very famous book that came out in I think it was 1910 or 1911. It might have been slightly later, but it was just before 1914, where a guy, and this book was very widely accepted as excellent and being and quite the guy was quite an authority. But it was the guy very very openly sort of said that based on where we are with technology and civilization, it's very unlikely that the world will see a great war again. And when you see video footage of the men on the trains heading off to the front lines, they're waving at their families and laughing and smiling, and their families are thinking, "This is fantastic." They're going to be away for a couple of months. The famous line of "It'll be over by Christmas" comes to mind, and then however long, 5 years later or 4 years later, 65 million people are dead.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable.
In many ways, it makes it more interesting to me than World War II, because I believe World War II really was just an extension of World War One. I don't think there was a temporary ceasefire, but all of the
but they all knew it was going to happen again, because the war reparations that Germany had to pay, they were so high that most of the Allied generals said, okay, this can only lead to another world war. Mm-hmm. And they were right. It took just exactly 20 years, and it happened again.
Yeah, and it was a 20-year breather. I mean, if you study anything about the run up to the Second World War, there was a lot of preparation and planning already underway. Not massively long after the ceasefire in World War One.
No, that's true. I think already in 1932, I think the Germans started rebuilding the army and preparing for another war.
Yeah. By the way, did you watch They Shall Not Grow Old, the Peter Jackson documentary about World War One?
I don't recall that one.
So Peter Jackson is, right? He's the guy that did Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So he did. He took all this old footage from World War One, so archival footage, interview footage, and he put it through various modern digital filters. And essentially, the way that the documentary opens is it's this old black and white, very grainy footage. Everything is kind of jumping around, and then the camera starts to zoom in on it, and it zooms in on it very slowly, and then all of a sudden it kind of reveals everything in color. and everything is the movement, the frame rate is similar to a modern film, which they've obviously done through various very advanced upscaling tech. But you can see that it's the original footage because of the state of the guy's mouth, their teeth, which look fucking horrible, but their teeth are all messed up, and they don't look like any sort of modern actors. And then the whole documentary is essentially just these guys recalling their experience of being in the trenches, being part of the surge and things like that. And the stories that they tell. I mean, I've watched a bunch of World War I documentaries anyway. And if anybody's watching this and is in any way interested, I would say absolutely make sure you watch Apocalypse World War I, which I think is the best documentary maybe ever made. But in They Shall Not Grow Old, these guys are talking about the stuff they were seeing during the surge. And, they say you would run, and then you just suddenly notice, there's a friend of mine with half his face blown off. And then you look to the side and, there's a guy with his stomach lying outside his body. It's unbelievable. I actually watched that documentary, and then the very next day I watched 1917, this new Sam Mendes movie. Yeah. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. I actually, at the end of 1917, I think both experiences caught up with me to such a point, I had to literally compose myself because I was, as I said, I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I was having a bit of a cry. I couldn't believe what those guys have gone through. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. I've seen the Apocalypse documentaries.
Yeah.
And it's strange to say it's beautiful, but it's because it's not beautiful at all. But it's intriguing. It's fascinating. It's unbelievable almost.
That opening scene on Apocalypse First World War, where they show the lineup of the guys that have had their faces blown off, or they've lost limbs or whatever, and all the guys that have that are shell shocked. Jesus Christ, that's some of the most disturbing shit that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on. So like we could talk about the First World War probably for the next week, and I wouldn't get bored. So anyway, I want to talk about kind of the run up then to Illuminati. So World Ablaze comes out. How did you personally feel about the response to that album? Because I guess there must have been a level of expectation or anticipation in your mind about how the fans and the critics would respond to it. Generally speaking, I would say it was very positive. But how did you feel about things? And did it live up to your expectations?
I think it did. The response was good. We play quite a bunch of songs from that album live still, which is, I don't know if that's still common nowadays. It seems like many bands produce new albums but hardly play any songs from it.
Yeah,
like Slayer played Repentless only from the new album, didn't they?
They played Repentless, and they played When the Stillness Comes. Okay. Well, at least when I saw them, and if we're very honest, they could have probably ditched them both in favor of something off Hello Waits, and I'd have been much happier.
Well, aside from that, I mean, I think Repentless is a good song. I don't know the other one, to be honest, but the fact that a band with that status brings out a new album and then only plays one or two songs live from that album, that's strange to me.
Yeah.
It means that the fans probably are only interested in the older stuff.
Yeah.
The same could happen to us. Of course, I still determine myself what we play and what we don't play. So I want to play new songs. But, of course, when the audience does not respond in a positive way, you're going to skip those songs because you don't want to play for people who don't like your songs.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. But, we play a couple of songs from World Ablaze, the title track, Escape Across the Ice. We play Annihilation Crusade, and we did another one. I'm very bad with my own titles, to be honest. But anyway, we still play like 3, sometimes 4 of the new album. Well, actually, of that album, which is already 2 years old or even more. That's a good sign, if people would respond in a negative way, you would skip those songs. But I noticed that we can play the new songs because people like them. This Friday, Illuminati comes out, and we're going to play 3 album release shows this weekend, and then a week later we start the European tour. We play 4 new songs from that album, which is half the album, basically.
Yeah.
Because it's 8 songs and an intro, so 4 songs is half the album. We are very proud of those songs. We are also proud of the other 4, but to play 8 new songs to people who don't know them yet is a bit much. But to play 4, I think that's cool. And we'll see how the people respond. But I'm positive about it. I think that we will play we will play a lot of the new stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, meaning from this album, from the previous album. And I think we have some albums from the past who are, well known, like Bloody Blasphemy, for example. But I don't think we will play a lot of those songs. You know, there will always be 1 or 2 that we will play from that album, but you know, it's so old by now.
Mm.
Many of the fans nowadays are younger than those albums.
Yeah, yeah.
So how much sense does it make to keep on playing all the old stuff?
Yeah.
While you have so much good new stuff?
Yeah. It is interesting that, though, because I feel like there are kind of 2 camps as far as the quality of new records are concerned. So Slayer was, to me, a great example, along with Metallica, Anthrax, arguably Megadeth. You know, bands. There are just certain bands. It feels to me like when they reach a certain level of financial success or commercial success, they just. I don't know whether it's like the Evander Holyfield saying, if it's really hard to go out and train when you're waking up in satin sheets. I don't know if it's hard to play metal if you're waking up in satin sheets, but there just seems to be a loss of hunger. Whereas if I think of a band like God Dethroned, Napalm Death, Testament, you know, those are 3 examples that come to mind. Paradise Lost, even, you know, not as heavy. But if you think of the quality of the stuff that all of those bands I've just mentioned, you know, including yourselves, have brought out, you know, over the course of their last 2 to 3 records, you bring out some of the best work of your career, but without a shadow of a doubt. And as you say, you could quite confidently play half the album to a crowd that hasn't heard it yet, because you know there's the songs are so strong. It's the chances are very good that the crowd is going to respond accordingly.
Yeah, I think so too. I hope so, at least, because you never know. It's always a bit of a gamble. But you know, if I can't even play the new stuff, then what's the point of making an album? Mm. I mean, it's already difficult enough. I mean, you know, the new times, so to speak, are the times where people listen to an album on Spotify. And if you're lucky, they listen to the whole album. And if you're unlucky, they just listen to a couple of songs. Mm. And it could be that you write half or more of the album for nothing, because people will only pick out the ones who became a single because Metal Blade released them as a single with a video. That could happen. But I noticed, for example, that a song like Escape Across the Ice, the White Army song from the previous album, it was one that was not promoted specifically through a video or whatever, but that one got picked up by the audience. So that's a song we always play. Mm. Although although it wasn't promoted specifically. So it means that a song is so strong that people notice it and enjoy it. So the same could happen to this album. There can be a song that we maybe don't expect so much of, but that it could be one of the stronger ones on the album. You know, as a band, you're not objective anymore because you've written the songs yourself. You recorded them. You think like, okay, these are the strongest. But maybe the audience thinks otherwise. Maybe they have their own favorites, and that's something that will have to prove itself. You know, just by playing the songs live, and then we'll see what happens. But if I can't even play songs from the new album live because I could be afraid that people don't know them, then I don't see the point in writing a new album.
Recording a new album. You're absolutely right, but you just touched on something that I for some reason I've never actually thought about. But given how basically streaming is the principal means by which people consume music nowadays, the data that you get back from streaming in many ways it probably brings you in some ways closer to the fans and closer to the way that they perceive your music than maybe you've ever had before in your career. Am I right in saying that?
Well, if I look at the amount of streams nowadays, a lot of people are streaming our music.
Yeah,
that's something I can see in the Metal Blade statements. So I guess it's a good thing. I don't know what's realistic. You know, when you see sales figures, you know, especially from the past when the sales figures were still good, you could tell how popular the band is by the sales figures. But nowadays, I don't know if 1 million streams for a song, is it good or not? I have no clue. Is it a lot or it sounds like a lot, but maybe it's not a lot at all. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I don't really know what the benchmarks would be, especially not for a band like you. And I guess where you're more likely to see that is in how that translates to the size of crowds that you draw. So, I mean, would you say, you could compare this now to 2012, or around the era of Under the Sign of the Iron Cross, and then and then World Ablaze. Have you seen your audiences grow over the last couple of years? Are they a fairly similar size?
Sometimes they're similar, and sometimes they're a lot bigger nowadays.
Yeah,
I can tell that we didn't lose fans. And I believe that a fan base renews itself because some people stay in the metal scene all their life, like you and me, for example, probably.
Yeah.
And some people get into the metal scene at a very early age, like maybe 13 or something, 12, 14, and then leave it again when they're like in their early 20s, because then other things come into their life, and then they're not a metalhead anymore.
Yeah.
So you could say that every 10 years you could have a new generation of fans. Basically, you'll still have some old fans, but you'll lose some of them, and if you're lucky, you gain some new ones. So it means, and if I look at the audience during a show, I can tell there's a lot of young people. Mm-hmm. So that's a good sign. I mean, when the audience is just as old as you are yourself, that's not a good sign. That's like the B.B. King effect, you know?
Means those merch and those royalty checks are going to start drying up as well.
Well, I think when there's no new young fans, you're going to have a problem eventually. Mm.
Because it's interesting to me as well to see the bands that have stayed relevant, because that's what I mean. I've noticed that as well. I've been going to I moved to the UK in 2002. I've been going to, I would say for a period of time I was going to probably 50 to 100 gigs a year. It's much less nowadays, but I have definitely noticed a difference in the demographics of the audience. It's just interesting for me to see which bands are attracting tons of newer fans versus which you can see, the fan base is getting pretty long in the tooth. And I haven't seen you guys. I haven't actually seen you guys play at all yet. But it's very interesting again, like that. You know, you're starting to see those young fans being attracted to you. You know, whereas I've seen other bands, big name bands where most of the audience is 30 plus at a minimum.
Yeah. Well, you have to keep in mind we're still an underground band. I mean, we don't belong to the big bands for sure. I mean, we're an underground band. But we play Underworld when we play in London. But there's nothing wrong about that. I mean, as long as that one's full, that's a good sign, and that one is not even full anymore, then you have a problem.
Yeah.
But nowadays touring is also different than before. You need a strong package, and then you can draw an audience. One good band alone will not do it anymore. That's something that has changed also over the years.
And do you think that's just because the live music scene or the touring circuit is that much more competitive? There's way more bands, there's way more shows being put on, so you kind of have to bring your A game, or stay at home.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I mean, there's too many bands with too many releases, if you want to put it like that. You can choose between, I don't know how many shows on the same day, every day of the week. So if you have to make choices, well, you don't have an unlimited bank account, most of the people.
Yeah.
So you have to make choices. So then you go to the package that appeals the most to you. And then you have to have some good bands on the bill. Otherwise, you might as well stay home.
Yeah.
As a band.
Do you feel like that I guess that pressure to perform or that competition that you might have from other packages or the tours, do you feel that brings more out of you on stage in terms of your performance and the quality of the performance that you're giving?
No, I don't give a shit. When I play live, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many people are there. I will give a good show no matter what.
Yeah.
When there's absolutely nobody there, that would not be nice, of course.
Yeah.
But luckily I can say that doesn't happen. No, of course, when it's a full house and everybody is going crazy, that's, of course, excellent. But no, I just enjoy playing live, so I will always try to do my best, and so does the band. And people pick up on it. We can't complain at all. It's just what it is, and I accepted the fact that God Dethroned is what it is, and that it will stay on this level probably, and I just do it for fun. And but I'm still motivated to go to the maximum of my abilities. So when I write songs, when I record an album, but also when I play live.
Well, there's a saying by a guy who does. He's like a powerlifter, bodybuilder guy. He's I follow a lot of his training videos and stuff like that. He's 53 years old now, but he's been pushing something called the vertical diet, which is entirely unrelated to what you spoke about now. But the saying that he has that I think relates to kind of your approach to playing live is compliance is the science. If you just kind of focus on delivering the best show that you possibly can every single time, no matter how big the audience, eventually people will catch on. And I've seen that with a lot of bands. I remember seeing, Mastodon, who are absolutely huge now. I remember seeing them touring for their first album. I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called now. But there must have been, it was in the Underworld. There couldn't have been more than 50 people there. But they played a show like they were playing in fucking Wembley Stadium. And like everyone that was there was blown away. Literally the next year, they sold out Brixton Academy for I think 2 nights running. And it's. I think you guys are not necessarily going to have the broad sort of commercial appeal, but the fact that you're still able to fill a venue like the Underworld, it says a lot. I mean, bigger bands like Deicide, bands like that, they've all kind of moved down to the Underworld level now. And they still get in a good crowd, but I think I think you should take away, at least from a London perspective, you should take away hopefully a head of confidence at the fact that you guys can still fill basically the premier venue for,
we don't do it on our own. When we tour, we try to tour with good bands. So the last time we played there, which was last year, we played there with Belphegor, Suffocation, and some other bands, and the package was good.
Yeah.
So people came there because there were interesting bands to see. And I didn't know what to expect from that show. I didn't know how many people would still know us because we hadn't been there in a while. It had been a while since we did an album, so I thought, okay, it could also be that nobody knows us anymore, but it was not the case at all. People were really happy that we came back.
Yeah.
So that was a relief, and that was a relief every day because it was the first tour in quite some years. And it was good to see that the fan base is still there.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we would tour alone or with unknown bands, so to speak, then of course you don't know what you can expect. But when you tour with Suffocation and Belphegor, then you have a good package. It's diverse, and all the bands are good, and then it makes sense.
Which I think is a nice way to kind of lead into talking about the new album, because I feel like the songs that I've heard of this record now, and I've heard Spirit of Beelzebub and I've heard the title track, so I've heard everything that Metal Blade has released as singles. Mm-hmm. I think that step up in confidence that you had between Under the Sign of the Iron Cross and A World Ablaze versus this record, I feel like this record takes it to the next level. This is obviously more sort of experimental than maybe the last album and possibly also Under the Sign of the Iron Cross, but it just sounds so much more confident. But I think equally, I sort of immediately warmed to both the songs, and I feel like live, what I heard would translate so well to an audience because it's kind of simple enough that even if you don't know the songs, you'll be able to catch on to them very quickly. But it's kind of, at the same time, it's dynamic enough that you can sit and listen to it in your room, or you can put it on the hi-fi, and there's a lot for you to dig into.
Well, as a matter of fact, the more often you listen to those songs, the more you will discover, because we added many layers into the music this time. So this album is a complete opposite of The World Ablaze, where that was a very pure album, very basic album, and it came down to the instrumentals. This one has a lot of extras. It has many layers of vocals with choirs and singing and grunting at the same time. It has a lot of keyboards, like Hypocrisy is doing, basically, just to lift up the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But there's so many layers in it, in the songs, in the music, that, when you listen to the music with a headphone or you listen to the music often enough, you will discover more and more that's hidden in the music. And that makes this album so interesting. Also, we didn't want to sound like many bands are sounding nowadays. It's all a budget thing, of course. Bands use plugins for the drums, but also for guitars nowadays. It makes recording easier, but it also means that many bands have a sound that's interchangeable with other bands because everybody's using the same tricks and many bands are using the same samples even.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do that. We wanted to sound like God Dethroned. So what we did is this. We rebuilt my house to a recording studio. We used the amps that we use live. We put mics in front of them, and we recorded our guitar sound that we always have live and in the studio. Many bands would record a clean signal to be able to reamp the guitar sound, to make something better if necessary, or to do it anyway. We didn't even do that. We just recorded our guitar sound and nothing more. There was no way back. If it turned out to be complete shit, then that's it. It would be terrible, but it wasn't. This is how God Dethroned sounds. So when we play live, it should sound exactly the same, which makes us, in my opinion, stand out from many other bands nowadays. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you do like God Dethroned, then this is exactly how the band sounds.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say I feel like I always felt like A World Ablaze had the potential to open you guys up to new audiences. I think this album maybe even more so. It's kind of in that layered approach, and also the live feel of the guitars. There's a different energy to this album that I think I think makes you guys very unique in 2020.
Yeah, I hope so. I think we even went beyond death and black metal on this album. There is parts on this album that are not typical for death and black metal. Mm. I don't know how to call them. I don't know what kind of label you should put on them. But I guess you just have to listen to it and make up your mind. But this is beyond death and black metal on certain songs on the new album. Of course, the singing will still label it as death and black metal, which is fine. But musically, it's broader than that. Mm. And I hope that people will pick that up, and I hope it will bring something good to the band.
Yeah, but that's again, to me, that's what keeps particularly the black metal scene so exciting to me. Is this? I feel like there's a tremendous amount of creative freedom in the scene right now, and I think there's a lot of bands who very mercifully don't give a fuck and they just do whatever they want. You know, I on the episode that I posted today, I was talking about a band out of Glasgow that I've heard for the first time. They just put out an EP called Lunar Mantra. Which is, you know, it's black metal, but it's kind of sort of spacey, sci-fi kind of atmosphere, along with just the sort of crushing Ruins of Beveras type doom. I think it's great that more bands are embracing this idea of creative freedom and not being tied down by genres anymore, not being tied down by kind of convention and expectation. And again, I think that is something to me about what I've heard so far on Illuminati that's really stood out. You know, and I applaud you for it, because I think it's going to make the album very successful.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right. I mean, yeah, it, like I said, it came from the heart, so it's genuine. You know, everything that's played there, everything we created is genuine, and I think people are very. They will notice that immediately. I think an audience can always tell if something is done because it's a hype for that moment, or when it's done because it's real. And when something is real, it's much more valued as when it's done because it's the hype of that time. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
My only concern is that you singing about the Illuminati and the Freemasons might mean that suddenly one day you just disappear.
That would make the band very popular, probably.
I was about to say you become legends. I mean, the first thing I thought, I will admit, the first thing I thought when I saw the title, I was like, has Henry become an Alex Jones fan?
I don't even know who that is.
Okay. Conspiracy theorist, you know, alternative newsman. So, but he's a dude who years back did a documentary about Bohemian Grove. You must know about that.
Maybe I do, but I don't remember. To be honest.
It's this woodland retreat where all of these political figures and elitists and bankers and stuff go to, and they worship Moloch, the owl god, and we on each other, and it's completely fucking insane. But he actually broke into it and took a bunch of video. I don't know whether he actually saw anybody famous, but it was sort of Jeffrey Epstein types that hung out there. And so, like I said, the first thing I thought about when I saw the Illuminati title, I was like, oh, God, Dethroned is talking about conspiracy theories.
Well, actually, this whole Illuminati thing has more to do with fighting for freedom than anything about conspiracies.
Yeah.
Because the Illuminati from Germany, they were basically fighting for a little bit of freedom. They were all university people, teachers, students, and they were forbidden to read certain books, for example. It's not even that long ago, just a couple of 100 years, and they were forbidden to read certain books, but they wanted to be able to do that. They wanted more freedom in certain ways. So they started this the Illuminati. They called themselves the Illuminati to bring some light into their life, basically. So there is this whole thing, this whole mystique around the Illuminati is what people created in their own minds later on. But back then, the real Illuminati, they just wanted some freedom. And they had to do it in secrecy. Otherwise, they would be persecuted. So it basically comes down to a feeling that many of us have. You want to be able to be free, to read what you like, to think what you like. And of course, in the UK and in Holland, that's pretty much possible. But there's many countries in the world where that's not possible. So it's still a very actual subject to talk about.
Yeah.
And what I describe in the lyrics is that you infiltrate from within and then try to change a society, or in my case, try to eliminate religion.
Yeah.
You know, so that's basically what the song is about. So it's actually a song about freedom.
Yeah, yeah. And I again, this comes back to not people, the generations not necessarily knowing or being familiar with history. I think anyone who does know history, understands how, should understand how precious the freedom is that we have, especially in the West. And they also should know, as the famous quote goes, freedom is only one generation away from extinction.
Yeah. I don't know how bad it is. But we're there to do something about it if something goes wrong. Because you should never underestimate the power of the people.
Yeah.
And strength comes in numbers also. So we shouldn't be too afraid, not yet. But to me, it was a fascinating subject.
Yeah, yeah.
It was something I never used before. So I could bring something new to the table as well, even for me.
Absolutely. Well, brother, I think that is about as good a point as any to let you go. Thank you so much for your time. I know you guys have got a lot coming up over the next couple of weeks, and I know you guys were rehearsing this week. So I'm massively grateful that you took the time to talk to me today. And I wish you all the best on the new record, and hopefully I'll catch you in London at some point soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. Let me know. We'll have a beer, and thanks for the interview, man.
Without a doubt, man. I will definitely let you know if I'm going to be there when you guys are in London, and beers will be on me.
Okay, cool.
Take care, my man.
All right. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. you so much to Henri for joining the show, calling in from Rotterdam, I believe it was. But either way, what a great conversation. What a great guy. And a reminder once again, that new album is called Illuminati, and it is available on Metal Blade Records now, so check it out. Another album that has recently become available is the new Sepultura, entitled Quadra. I believe this is the second album that they're doing for Nuclear Blast, and it's probably about the seventh or eighth album of the Derek Green era. And I'm going to be very honest and upfront about this. I am one of the very few that probably took and has always taken a fairly neutral approach to Derek Green and to the Derek Green era of Sepultura. I discovered the band when Arise came out. And after Arise, I discovered, or I got into Beneath the Remains. Chaos AD came out. I thought that was great. Roots came out, and I was kind of iffy on that. And then when Derek joined, I kind of went the opposite way to a lot of my friends at the time, who sort of felt that the band was over and done with. And I was quite curious to see what they would do and what they would deliver. And to be honest, I've actually liked quite a lot of the albums that they've done with Derek. I think, firstly, Derek is a much better vocalist than Max. I think his voice is more versatile. I think he looks better on stage. He sounds a lot better on stage. They still have Andreas, who is an absolute god on guitar, writing their riffs. I feel like they have, over the last couple of years, been very consistent in terms of writing catchy albums, but albums that are, have not been afraid to sort of experiment and go in different directions and kind of keep things interesting. So when this album came out, or with this album coming out, I think one of my biggest observations of it right off the bat is the fact that they seem to be, or the record seems to be landing on a lot more sort of fertile ground for this band than anything that's come before. A lot of the reviews that have come out, whether or not people are put off by the fact that Max Cavalera now looks like a hobo, or they just have sort of warmed over the years to Derek. Generally speaking, the reviews are for the album are great, but I guess the attitude from the off seems that people have all been quite keen to hear this. Now, that could be down to the fact that the two singles they released, Isolation and Last Time, were both fucking spectacular. But, again, like I said, it could be that all the times people have seen them play live, or the sort of passing of time over the last couple of years and the records that they have put out. In my view, particularly Kairos, the mediator between head and hands must be the heart, and Nation. It might just have grown on people. Anyway, but let's talk about Quadra. So this is the 15th record in the Sepultura canon. And it sounds very much like a Sepultura record, but it again kind of pushes the creative envelope in a lot of different directions. There are choirs on this album. There's a lot of very exotic instrumentation. The choice to use Jens Borgren as the producer for the record, I think, was a good one. He's done a lot of stuff with Dimmu Borgir, Arch Enemy, At the Gates, Catatonia. I think he even produced a baby metal record. He's done a lot of interesting stuff, and I think he's really brought out a great sound in the band here. Like I said, from the off, this record is heavy. It's very, very aggressive. I think it might be Derek's best work. But the band take a very sort of free-spirited approach to the creative side of things, and it pays dividends for them. So, as I said earlier, the majority of the reviews have been really positive. I would echo that. Now, will this change people's opinion of the band who have or you kind of felt that after Roots they were no longer Sepultura? I would have, if you asked me this question a month ago, I probably would have said no. However, a very good friend of mine, Lee Wallenschlager from Malevolent Creation, who was also on the show quite a few months back, sent me a text not too long ago, and he was like, "Man, you should hear the new Sepultura. It absolutely fucking kills. I get what you mean about Derek now." So what I would say is, I mean, this dude was a staunch advocate for the Cavalera era. He was, openly said he didn't like anything that Derek did. He found Derek boring, and even he now sees what I mean about Mr. Green. So If Quadra can turn him, who knows? Possibly it can turn you. But I will leave that to each one of you to decide. I think the album is well worth checking out. And like I said, it has just been released, so you should be able to get it on Spotify, Tidal, Qobuz, or wherever you listen to your music on. This is one of my favorite tracks off the record. It is called Last Time. was Last Time by Sepultura off the new album Quadra, available on Nuclear Blast Records. Their 15th record of their career, and in my view, one of the best they've done since probably Kairos, maybe since Nation. And as I said, if it is well worth checking out whether or not you have been in the past a Derek Green hater. Although seriously, man, how can you hate the guy? He is such a friendly dude, such a cool, charismatic frontman, and just an absolute fucking gargantuan beast when he's on stage. I don't know whether anybody read some of the comments that Gloria Cavalera made about him. So I think this happened in the last 2 weeks. The comments came in response to an interview that Derek had, and Derek was asked the same question he gets asked in every fucking interview, which is, so tell me how you feel about the Max Cavalera about Max Cavalera and the fans clamoring for a reunion, which I think the poor guy must be so fucking sick of. He could probably climb the walls from it. But anyway, he answered it the way that he, I think, has answered all of those questions pretty much since he joined the band, which is basically, I thought, very pragmatic. He said, I think for some people, it's hard for them to really move on. It's hard for people to change in general, for the fact that they're fearful of change because of the unexpected when changing. It's hard for certain people, but that's okay. It's not where we're at musically, and thank God we were able to move forward and not only rely on the past. I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, what should they have done? Just played old songs with Derek on vocals? But anyway, so Gloria responds on Facebook, hey, I have a shout out. Fuck you. Max and Igor never talk about a reunion. Why do you think they left? LOL. Which to me just reads like sour grapes. I think those are the comments of an unhinged lunatic. And quite honestly, if I read that, I am not surprised that Andreas and Paolo may have had second thoughts about having her as their manager. But anyway, that's my take on that. Now let's talk about something that's a lot more pleasant. So Corpsing, led by a friend of the show, Giuseppe Cutispoto, are going to be releasing a new record in the not too distant future. The album is called Civilization Under Nefarious Tyrants, and I am going to be playing, I believe, a world premiere. So Giuseppe sent across a track for me. If you're into blackened death metal, you will absolutely love this. The song is called Brexit, which is not the Dutch pronunciation of the word Brexit, but wherever you stand on that politically, there is no denying the song is fucking great, and I am really looking forward to hearing the rest of the album. Now, I'm going to leave the link to their Kickstarter campaign in the comments of this video. If you don't, or if you're listening to this on iTunes, on a podcast, just go to their Facebook page and there's a link on there. But basically, what they are doing is creating a limited edition vinyl of the album, and if you pledge X amount of money, you can get a digital copy of the album, you can get a digital copy of the albums in their back catalog, and then you can also get a vinyl album. And if you spend, I believe, £50 or more, you can get a drum lesson plus the digital album. So that's very cool. But anyway, this song, like I said, will be featured on their new album, Civilization Under Nefarious Tyrants. Massive thanks to Giuseppe for sending this to me, because, like I said, what a cool exclusive to have, and one I'm very proud to play on the show for the first time ever. So brace yourselves. This is Brexit. by Corpsing off the forthcoming album Civilization Under Nefarious Tyrants. And we will definitely have Giuseppe back on the show at some point, probably near the release of the record, which I believe happens in May. So yeah, massively looking forward to that. Or for looking forward to hearing the rest. That song was absolutely killer. Anyway, it is time for me to say goodbye. On next week's show, I'm going to be featuring Pavel Machet of Blaze of Perdition. He is also known as Sonolion. I know that I have probably butchered all three of those names, but it doesn't matter. All you need to hear is Blaze of Perdition to know that next week's show is worth tuning into. And speaking of which, I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who has checked out this episode and has checked out all my other episodes. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and they were talking about the number of podcasts and the amount of content that people are creating every single day. And the numbers are fucking eye-watering. It's something like 700,000 podcasts, of which I would assume about 100,000 of those are metal podcasts, and 300,000 hours of content every minute or every hour. So yeah, something just absolutely insane. Which means that the fact that you guys chose this show to listen to, or chose to listen to the last 2 hours, is really cool and really humbling, and I massively appreciate it. So thank you very much. I hope wherever you are doing well and healthy, and on the road to prosperity. From the mean streets of Surbiton on the outskirts of London, until next week, I am bidding you a fond farewell.